Morning, everybody. Welcome to this week's webinar from Annika Digital. It's myself, Anne Stanley, and I've got Jordan Munton with me today. Good morning, Jordan.
Hello, Anne. Hello, everyone.
And Jordan is going to be talking about ChatGPT today. So hopefully everybody can see the slides. And Susan's just asked, will you get the recording? Yes, you will. At the end of the session, it takes about an hour to process, and then you can get the slides. On other housekeeping notes, you can also go and grab the handouts top right as well, where you can get the slides. But what we're going to do is we're going to start with a little poll. So I'm going to start polling now. I'm going to read the questions and the answers. So if you could join us in the poll. So what have you been using chat and other generative AI tools for? So this is ChatGPT, Bard, things like DALL-E, loads of other stuff going on there. So I've been using it for editing and writing assistant, e.g. shortening, expand and rewrite, idea generation for blogs, content calendars, etc. Topic research or understanding how a subject, more about a subject, so what it is, how does it work, creation of images and automation of email and responses, and others, and you can specify in the chat. Now, we tried to add an option for we haven't started it yet. So if you haven't started it, you've not used it, again, stick it in the chat and we can see how many people. So basically, the most popular answer at the moment is 38% have been using it for editing and writing assistance, which is how we all started learning to use it, wasn't it, Jordan? And then the next most popular are idea generation and topic research. So very, very few people are using it for images. Very few people, less than 10%, are using it for automation and creating responses. And then there's a few people that have got others. So it'll be interesting to see what they've got to say. So generally, the most popular is definitely editing. So hopefully that's helpful for you. So let's just go back to the queue. I think that's the only quiz for today, isn't it? So I'm going to say goodbye and pass over to you. And I'll be answering the chat and I'll see you in about 40 minutes. Bye.
Thank you, Anne. Hello, everyone. So today I'm going to go through how digital marketers can effectively use ChatGPT's capabilities. So there's obviously other AI out there, but I've sort of been mainly using ChatGPT from a perspective of a Google Ads, Bing Ads perspective, and also like a social media posting perspective. So I'm sort of just going to talk about how I've used it so far, what I've learned, what I've not learned, some of the sort of options available to you. But I'm not going to try to talk about things that I'm not familiar with, i.e. using AI to do creative, because we sort of have an in-house person doing that sort of stuff. Me. So I'm a senior paid media account manager, bit of a long title. I've been at Annika about 3.5 years, I think, nearly 4 probably. Doing Google Ads, Bing Ads, Facebook, LinkedIn, loads of different platforms. I've sort of got an experience with all areas really. So about Annika, for you guys who haven't attended a webinar before, no ego, no bull. I'm horrendous at telling lies, so I tend to just speak what I feel. So I definitely don't have no ego, no bull. We were established in 2007. We've got 23 members of staff, 46 plus clients, and then we have 7 services, which are analytics, creative, paid media, PR and content, SEO, social media. That's sort of more like organic social media, and then we also do quite a lot of training as well. We have loads of services to offer. We also won some awards. So for you guys who have attended the webinar before, you'll see Emil and Ed most weeks now. But they fully deserve it, having won 4 awards at the Paid Media Awards. They can have that glory all they like. And then our pedigree, we've worked some recognizable brands, and then some other ones which aren't so recognizable, but just as good to work with. So the likes of NHS, Uber for Business, Eon, them sort of companies we've worked with. And then here's the team in all its glory. And then so let's get on to the actual reason you're all here. So ChatGPT, what is it? So for most of you guys, you probably are aware of ChatGPT 3. So this was sort of the first mainstream version of it. This is where you could actually go in and sort of directly interact with the chatbot, and it sort of spread like wildfire, I guess. But you might not be aware of sort of ChatGPT 1 and 2. You probably weren't aware of them. Most people were aware of number 3. And you can see over time how the parameters developed. So it was 117 million with the first version, 1.5 billion with the second, 175 billion for the one that we mostly know. And then ChatGPT, from what I can tell, sort of changed its approach on what parameters it was going to use, and it sort of changed its learning methods. And it meant in sort of the end of 2022 that actually the 3.5 version, which from when I'm using this tool on a sort of daily basis, I only now have the option of 3.5 and 4, because we, as an agency, we do pay for the 4 version. But the parameters dropped quite significantly. And I believe, I think that's meant to say 1.5 billion. No, sorry, that is correct. Sorry. And then, ChatGPT 4, which you get access to if you have the paid version, has 1.7 trillion parameters. Now, when ChatGPT 3 was around, there was sort of people saying, "Oh, we think when ChatGPT 4 comes out, that it'll have 100 trillion parameters," because that's how this sort of the parameters were ballooning as they developed it. But as I say, 3.5 is where they sort of changed how it worked. And it meant that the amount of parameters needed were significantly less. Still a lot there, but a lot less than what people were thinking it would be before it was launched in March. So in terms of the paid versus the free version, both allow you to sort of use that AI, speak to that AI, does sort of support them multiple languages. I've not tried it myself, but I believe you can actually go in and sort of ask it to translate text into another language. Now, I'll get onto that further on why I haven't done that and probably wouldn't do that. In terms of the paid version, so you get like 24/7 customer service. You also get priority responses, meaning your queries are answered quicker. And to be honest, I can't confirm or deny it, but I also imagine when the servers get quite overloaded, the first thing to be sort of throttled and paused temporarily is the free version, with the paid users being able to use it more. As I say, the paid version also gives you access to ChatGPT 4 and also allows you to access plugins. So one of the plugins we use is a plugin called Link Reader, which allows you to, when you're putting your prompts in, to list a website, and ChatGPT will then go onto that site to then, if you're asking it to write ad copy or whatever it may be, it can use the website to sort of bring you back the ideas. Whereas, without the plugins, it's very much, if you do try to put the website in, it will say, I don't have the ability to sort of crawl that site. So that's sort of some of the main reasons. There's probably others, but as I say, I'm purely coming at this perspective of what I've experienced so far. And I guess the main aim of this webinar as well is to make it approachable and not feel like you've missed the boat and that it's gone so far that you can't catch up. So in terms of the paid media use cases, So sort of what I do day to day. So the first one, as it looks like most of you have used it for, is sort of the research tool. So this is where you're going to be asking questions. Now, this screen grab here is from a 3.5 version. The 4 version will make it slightly more sort of reader friendly. So it will do stuff like you can see the pointers here, like child nostalgia, collectability, etc. They will be in bold in the 4 version, just making it a little bit more easier to read. But you will sort of go down this dialogue path with ChatGPT. It's if you just searched in Google or Bing for something, that's all well and good, and it'll bring your answers, and you'll have to then search down and click through websites and read it. Whereas with ChatGPT, you can sort of open up this dialogue and go back and forth. So the first question you might ask is, what's the main reasons for someone deciding to buy Hot Wheels? So childhood nostalgia, collectability, hobby and customization, play and entertainment, affordability, brand reputation, social connection, and it will give you a little bit of it will sort of elaborate on that a little bit. So this starts as a research tool. If, for example, from a perspective of an agency, or if you were, a toy company who were then now stocking Hot Wheels, and you were, as the PPC manager or social media manager, were told to go away and create ads to sell this, you might have, I grew up with Hot Wheels, so I know a bit about Hot Wheels, and it's quite a big brand anyway, but you might not know anything. So ChatGPT is quite a good way of just getting that initial background information. These questions, they're not hypercritical to be you might read down here, and the more you know about something, you might start to pick out errors of what ChatGPT is coming back in terms of what it's saying. But research tool, it's very top level, so you can probably take this with take this as it is and use it to sort of generate ideas and again decide how you want to proceed with your campaign structure. And then you might decide, so you now know what would make people want to buy Hot Wheels, but then you might ask them why wouldn't they buy Hot Wheels? So it might be lack of interest, age appropriateness. The Hot Wheels, they might, a bit like Lego these days, it's really expensive just to get the smallest model. So it might be that just they don't have the budget. But these start to help you to think when you're writing stuff like ad copy, what pain points people have, and on the flip side, what sort of strings you can pull to make them want to buy your product. So why wouldn't they, and why would they? And this can then again, this is very top level, but the thing with ChatGPT as well is you do a lot of follow-on questions to delve more into it. So, for example, on this one, why wouldn't someone buy Hot Wheels? You might say it might say environmental concerns, and then you could ask a follow-up question of, okay, what environmental concerns, or could you tell me a bit more about the environmental concerns linked with toys like Hot Wheels? And then you might ask stuff like, why would someone buy from a Hot Wheels competitor? And again, some of these, it might come back and it either will jog another idea. So you might think of three other reasons why your competitor is better than you, or whatever it may be. And some of these you might not be able to control, but at least it makes you aware of what is the general consensus out there. But as you say, you sort of enter this dialogue to quality check what is initially coming back. And then you might also, as I say, you might not have a clue what else is out there. So, for example, I know about Matchbox, for example, but I don't know about any of these other ones. So if I was to promote, Hot Wheels, I didn't have any knowledge of the market, this would be a really easy way for me to, again, get a list of 7 competitors. And then, as I say, if you're an agency, you'd go back to the client, or if you were like the marketing manager of the company, you might go to your boss or your product developer or whatever and say, are these competitors correct? Is there any missing, etc.? But at least you start doing some of this yourself, or they might not even, your company might not even be aware of some of these. you then go away and start searching Johnny Lightning and discover that actually, yes, they might be a competitor, or they still sell similar products, or whatever it may be. So again, it's a very good way of getting that information really quickly to you, rather than having to sort of search the inner depths of the internet or your company files. And then again, you might this is starting to get not much more advanced, but a little bit more advanced in terms of what words would people use to search for Hot Wheels cars without using the word Hot Wheels. So again, now you're starting to sort of engineer to some degree how ChatGPT responds. It now knows it can't respond with Hot Wheels toy cars, Hot Wheels diecast cars. It has to remove that and then go out and try find sort of search terms. And again, this might be one for if you're starting a new campaign on Google Ads, for example, and you really don't have a clue where to start, because even with the tools in Google Ads, you have to have some form of like keywords to start with to even start to do that keyword research. So yeah, chucking these in, you'll get a list of these, and you could put that into the Google Ads keyword planner, and it might come back and say, well, 15 of these don't have any search volume, in which case it's, you wouldn't use them. But these might generate additional keywords that you might use in your campaigns that you wouldn't have done before, because you had in your head Hot Wheels car and a couple of keywords, which doesn't really open up the blind spots that you might have. So yeah, as I say, it's very good for idea generation and amplification as well. So as I say, it sort of can get your ideas flowing in terms of what keywords are out there, what I might include in my ad copy, what competitors are doing, etc. And it's really good for niche industries as well, because people who have worked in niche industries, or you're working for the same company over an amount of years, you can only describe a product in so many ways. Your sort of brain gets a block, and you can't think of any other ways to describe something or sell something. So this is where you can sort of put in your general idea of what you want to see in the ad copy, or put in existing ad copy you might have, and then ask ChatGPT to basically expand on that and give different variations of that. So this example to the right, I was saying that I wanted to sell oranges in schools. And again, I might not have had a clue what to put in the headlines or descriptions, but this gives us some sort of general idea of what headlines we could use. Now, ChatGPT is very much still at the point of a lot of quality checking is still very prevalent, and sometimes it actually takes longer to quality check and sift through this information than just doing it normally. If you've written ad copy before, sometimes it's just easier just to do it that way. But ChatGPT is good for where you sort of get that point of, I can't think of another way to write it, or how do I even begin writing about this subject? That it can sort of get your ideas flowing, and then you can maybe then go off ChatGPT and go back to your normal way of how you would write it. And you can see in here as well some of the problems that do sort of exist. I think they've sort of solved it, but sort of not. But in this instance, you can see some of them headline options are so long. And I asked Google if they could do this for a Google ad headline. And for you guys who have run them, the character limit for a Google Ads headline is 30 characters. And now definitely number 2 and number 5 in them headline options are way more than 30 characters. And likewise, descriptions look pretty long as well. So again, I think they've sort of solved that now, but that's one of the sort of problems you have when trying to amplify it. You then have to make sure it's still fitting in the parameters you're trying to use it for. You can use it for technical applications. So this, rather than trying to search the web, the web for scripts, or how to like edit a script, or how to, I would say GA4, but I'll get into why you can't do that. But yeah, just searching for scripts, it can be quite good at doing that. So you can see here, I believe this was one where I just wanted it to pause on certain hours of the day. and it sort of gave me a very basic script. The variations between ChatGPT 3 and 4 were quite big. GA4 would come back with this whole big list of script, and ChatGPT would be quite small. The 3.5 to 4, it doesn't seem as big. And I guess also the thing I'll go on to in a minute is we might necessarily think ChatGPT 4 was better because it was providing you a lot more information, because it was showing you a bigger script, but I'm not sure if it is or not. But yeah, from a technical perspective of doing things like scripts or asking script type questions, it's quite good to do. I was asking stuff like what parameters are available when writing scripts as well, because it's very hard to find that information out. If you go onto the Google developer website, it's not very user-friendly to actually search through and find the information you want, whereas ChatGPT sort of at least give me a starting block of what to search so that I can find out more about that data. So this is one thing I've used for my accounts, is sort of using it to write scripts, and yeah, most of the time they have worked. Maybe a little bit of a tweak, but they have worked. So in terms of questions, so this is the first questions I showed you were very basic, whereas this is you might start to ask a little bit more complex stuff like I have a mortgage company that specializes in mortgages for 25 to 35-year-olds. What should my landing page contain that will improve my conversion rate? So again, you're giving it a bit of context, and then again, it will come back with some indications of what you should be considering when doing your landing page. So then you can go into your landing page and sort of do a tick box exercise and say, okay, have I got a clear and engaging headline? Have I got like a call to action? Am I sort of showcasing that my business is perfect for them 25 to 35-year-olds looking for a mortgage, maybe first time buyers or whatever it may be. Like you have loads of experience in helping first time buyers get on the property ladder. So yeah, landing, you can sort of ask these questions, and I say with that plugin, you can even plug that in and say, how can I improve this website? And then it will come back and it will be even more tailored to your exact website to say you could actually tweak this, that, and the other. Whereas you can see in this instance, it doesn't have, it can't actually see your landing page in this example because I haven't provided the link, and therefore it's somewhat still generic with some sort of bits sprinkled in there because I've given them a bit of context that we're a mortgage company and we target a certain age group. And then again, it might be like you did with Hot Wheels, is it's all well and good off asking ChatGPT how you would improve your website, but you also might start asking it questions like what would stop people submitting a form on your website. So asking the flip side of that question to try get the other side of it, because it's all well and good saying an engaging call to action, but then on that last one, it didn't say anything, I don't believe, on sort of like the form and making sure it's not complicated or a lengthy form. So asking both sides of it is a good way of sort of engineering your responses as well, a bit like we were doing with the Hot Wheels. So yeah, going on to prompt engineering and some of the previous points, I was a bit vague because it will help you in this instance. So for example, I've got an example here of providing context versus not providing context. And you sort of saw it slightly on that mortgage example, but in this instance, imagine that you walk up to someone in your office or wherever it may be, or you're down the pub and you're asking your mate a question and you just said, how do I change a tire? Now, they might not know what car you have. They don't know. You've not said, I need to change my tire on a Fiat 500. You're not giving them any context. So what they'll bring you back is, well, you should probably apply a handbrake, you loosen the nuts, jack up the car, replace the tyre, lower the car, tighten the nuts fully, and then check your tire pressure, and it's very generic. There's not really any, there's no real helpful information. You sort of get a general gist of how to do it, but not really. Whereas with context, so you might tell them that you want to change a tire on a Ford Focus, and it's I don't know, an NMK3 model variation, and it's whatever plate. So it's a 2015 plate Ford Focus, and so you provide all this information, and then depending on who you're speaking to, they might then, with that context, they can give you a better answer. So they might start with apply a handbrake, but then they know, because you've given them loads of information, they know that them wheels, they have 4 normal nuts that you just loosen, but the 5th one is a locking nut that you need a special tool for, and that tends to be provided. And then again, with the jacking point, because they know you've given them more information, they can say, okay, well, with this model of car, there's actually, if you run your hand under the car near the tire, there's actually 2 dimples, and you put the jacking point between them 2 points because that's the strongest part of the car. This car's been designed for that. And then you might, instead of just saying replace tire, it might say, replace tire that is as standard in the back of this car, or it might obviously say, some cars it doesn't have spare tire, etc. And again, it might give some more context because it knows that the spare tires in that car are, speed tested to 50 miles per hour. And then the last one is, it might say, instead of just check tire pressure, it might actually give you a recommendation, like, your friend or whatever, or ChatGPT might say, actually, the PSI for this one is 32. Make sure it's at that level before you drive. So you can see, with and without context, a simple task of changing a tire is completely different. And this is the same with ChatGPT. If you give it no context, you'll get very generic, very unhelpful answers. The more context you give it, the more response engineering you do, you'll get a lot more information that is a lot more relevant to you and useful to you. So in terms of using these questions, so being specific with what you're asking. So as I say there, it might be asking for answers for a certain model of car. And you also might ask that you want it in the response in bullet points. You might want it in a table format. You might want it for a certain use case. For example, you want them to write some ad copy, but you want to write them it for a responsive search ad, or you want them to write it for a Facebook post. So yeah, really making sure you're giving it all the information so it knows what you're wanting back. I guess it's a bit like when you're trying to teach someone or show them something, you try to give them as many instructions as possible, so that when they then bring the work back to you, it's what you're sort of expecting. It's not sort of a million miles away. And then, once you've asked that first question, you then ask follow-up questions, because this is a good way of sort of delving into the answer and getting more information to help validate it. So again, on the car example, you might say, why does that car model have a locking nut? And it might then give you more information, and then you can say, okay, that makes sense. It's not making that up. It's giving you more information to sort of validate that answer is correct, because this, from that point of view, you might not know anything about cars, and therefore the only way you can sort of quality check it to some degree is asking them follow-up questions, or asking them questions and then going onto Google and just double checking it, or asking a colleague or whatever it may be. Another one is open-ended questions. So this is a way of just, again, you might not really know much about the subject, so you might ask a very open-ended question to sort of create that dialogue. And then when ChatGPT then comes back with their sort of generic responses, you might be able to pick a certain area to sort of delve into more and start asking them more pointed questions, and getting the more specific information out of them. But open-ended questions to begin with can be quite good when you don't really know that much about the subject, and you want really ChatGPT just to give you all the information, and not potentially, if you're asking it a specific question from the get-go, you're probably going to miss a lot of information, because ChatGPT will disregard that and just your specific question with your parameters you've set. And then last one, which is probably one of the best ones to do, is a disconfirming question. So this is ChatGPT is very much programmed to give you the answer it thinks you want, or the answer that it deems to be correct. So in some degree, I sort of compare it to playing the devil's advocate. So going asking about the negative side of it. Most people might fall into this trap of asking, what's sell this product, what's the best parts of this product, etc., but not actually thinking, like asking ChatGPT, okay, what are the downfalls of this product, what are the potential consequences, sort of asking ChatGPT them questions they don't really expect, go flipping both sides of that, and sort of seeing both sides of the fence, not just asking ChatGPT one side. And that is arguably one of the better types of questions you can ask. So this is a Wharton study. I've provided the link below of the author who sort of expanded on this and created these screen grabs. So you can go to Search Engine Land and view them there. And I think some of the Annika staff also do articles on Search Engine Land, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, so the Wharton study was this study about how you ask, depending on what type of question you ask, what would a salesperson disclose. And the problem, the case study this was for, was there was an iPod they had and it crashed twice. So they knew that, and then they got asked these questions. And question A was, what can you tell me about it? And 8% of the salespeople disclosed that it had crashed. The second question, test question, was, it doesn't have any problems, does it? At which point 61% of salespeople responded saying it had crashed. And then the third prompt was, what problems does it have? And 89% of respondents told the person that the iPod had crashed. So you can see from the type of question you ask tends to then make a person and ChatGPT respond in a certain way, because it's very hard to, when someone is asking what problems does it have, to not mention the problems and try to say what benefits it has, because that's not the question. The question is what problems it has. So if you expand on this more, so prompt 10A was, I would like to buy this used iPod. What can you tell me about it? So that was the full question, and ChatGPT's response. So this is, again, I believe her name was Amy, sort of expanded on this and put it into took this study and put it into ChatGPT. And the response was, iPod models vary in terms of features, storage capacity, and generation. And it sort of gave it a lot of information, but not really anything. It didn't really give much, to be honest. And then Amy then asked again with the C prompt. So again, I would like to use this used iPod. What problems does it have? And ChatGPT then responded with a lot more problems. So, if you asked that first question and just accepted it, you wouldn't have had a clue that these are the potential issues of buying a used iPod, that the battery life might be rubbish, the physical condition, it might have been damaged or whatever it may be, might be screen issues, etc. So again, using sort of disconfirming questions can actually garner this sort of information, these blind spots that you potentially had about an iPod, because you probably didn't know any of this information and you wouldn't have thought to ask about stuff like battery life or screen issues. It's a bit like, I would feel like if I was buying a new car now, I would ask what are the problems with a certain car, because it's always, every time I buy a car, there's always an issue, and it's always a well-known issue that when you then become part of that owners club, that's a standard issue. I had my first car was a Fiat Punto, and it was a well-known issue that the wiper blade motor would give up. And so you'd be driving around the road and it would just stop halfway and the sort of mechanism would disconnect. So you could do like a bodge and put it back on, but it'd break again as soon as it started raining. And that was a well-known issue. But when you're doing your research, you sort of miss them things. So I'm tempted to, when I go to buy a new car, is actually use ChatGPT to say, I'm thinking about buying this car. What are the potential issues with this model of car, this age, this variant of that, and it would then expose me to them blind spots rather than what can you tell me about the new Mercedes. It would just give you sort of more positive information. I would suggest. So in terms of bias, so this is really important. And again, this is something that Amy brought up and I sort of looked into it further. But the Gell-Mann amnesia effect. So these are both to do with sort of media, but they are, relatable to ChatGPT as well. But this is the phenomenon where of people trusting sources, so i.e. ChatGPT, for topics which they're not knowledgeable about, despite recognizing them to be extremely inaccurate on certain topics which they are knowledgeable about. So, for example, I might be doing ad copy and or asking Google about Google Ads. What are the history of Google Ads, and it might provide me information, and I can, because I have that information in mind, I know of that information, I can go, well, that's a lie, that's not correct, that's inaccurate, that's wrong, and I'm more than happy to correct that. But at the same instance, then what I need to be aware of is when I'm looking at stuff like scripts that I know nothing about, how I can't then go, oh, that'll be right, I'll trust that now. So yeah, you need to be aware of this sort of amnesia effect of when you do this and you have knowledge of a certain area, you'll spot errors, but then just keep that in mind of when you are then researching stuff you don't know anything about, you need to be aware of there's probably going to be errors there, but because you don't know about the subject, you probably won't spot them. So this is where you sort of the follow-up questions, or just before, if it's at the stage of before, you set a campaign live, it's just quality checking it the ways you would normally do it. And then the second bias is Knowles' law of media accuracy. So this is, again, to do with media. So people often assume that everything they hear in the media is true, except for cases where they're familiar enough with the story in order to be able to identify the errors. So it's pretty much a slightly different bias, but the same sort of thing. So this is, again, you in the instance of going back to, so you could ask Google to translate the English, your English ad copy into French ad copy. And or vice versa, French to English. And if you did French to English and you could go and look at the English and go, well, I'm familiar with English, and I can spot that there's errors here really easy. But if you do it the way around, and because you don't know any information, you assume that the French translation is now 100% correct. It's not going to be, but most people would assume. It's sort of, when stuff becomes more complex, people start to sort of just assume that it's correct because they don't have any other way of saying it isn't. So yeah, these are two things that you just need to be aware of when you're using ChatGPT. And it's day-to-day life, reading media on it, etc. is looking at a topic and actually thinking, okay, is it actually correct? What can I do to check it is actually correct? So yeah, that's I guess anything from this is that bias is the main thing when you're using ChatGPT. So some of the drawbacks I've experienced so far with it is, depending on the time of day, you basically get errors saying like you can't access it at this point, and it's basically the server's just having too many people trying to use it. Now, as I say, from the paid version, it's not as common. If you had the free version, I imagine it is a lot more common, but still, if you're going to start using this as your sort of daily tool, and then it starts just constantly being errors, then it's not going to be that useful. When I went to write this webinar, I obviously had to go on and do screen grabs, and I think I went on twice or three times before I could actually, I tried different times a day, etc., before I actually managed to get on to use it. I think it's got better, but I guess part of it is the influx of users, the servers, they're having to constantly expand to be able to support the users. And something just to be aware of as well. I mean, ChatGPT is relatively new. I think it was March this year it was released, but there is some sort of like throttling at the moment. So you can only have 25 responses per 3 hours. So if you ask them 25 questions, you get 25 responses. But if you do that in half an hour, you can't ask another question to the 4 version until that 3 hours passed. So what I tend to do is I tend to do a mixture of the two. So I use 3.5, which is definitely a big improvement on 3, to do most of my back and forth and initial research and delving into stuff. And then when I get to the point where I just want that a little bit more improved, I guess, response, with all the knowledge I've just gained from ChatGPT 3.5, I then start asking maybe 5 questions in ChatGPT 4 to then garner them extra responses, because 25 would go quite quickly for me anyway. Data freshness. What you just need to be aware of is ChatGPT 3 only has data up till September 21. So if you ask anything to do with these, you'll get even sort of no answer, and it says, oh, well, my data only goes up to this point, so I can't help you. Or it'll just come up with random information just to answer your question. ChatGPT is very good at just answering your question it'll just either make up information or just flat out just take something which is irrelevant and put it in there. So if you were to ask anything about, Performance Max best practices or new updates to do with Performance Max, it wouldn't provide you that information. The same with J4. J4 obviously been around for quite a while before this sunset, and that happened at the start of this month. But again, anything sort of, recent with J4 in terms of updates, it won't tell you anything about that. And server-side tracking, anything new that has happened after September 21, it will not have that information. So depending on when this subject first started, it will give you stuff between 2019 and 21, but after that you won't get any of the up-to-date information. And digital marketing tends to move pretty quickly, so that stuff would be you'd be missing a lot of it. And it's not just this. You can probably think of 5 topics in your head that if you were to ask about it wouldn't have a clue what information to give you, or if it did give you information, it would give you information from, if you asked about the new Apple Watch, it would probably start bringing information back from the Series 5 or something like that of its technical elements or what you can do with it. It would just be pulling it from somewhere else. So as I say, generic and incorrect responses. So this is all to do with prompt engineering. So it's sort of what you put in is what you get back. So if you put in very generic questions, you'll get sort of generic responses with no real sort of substance to them. They'll just be words. There'll be no sort of tailorization to your sort of use case you're wanting to use them in. As I say, they are good for maybe opening that dialogue and finding out more about whatever subject you're searching, but you quite quickly need to start doing this sort of prompt engineering and sort of funneling ChatGPT down a certain route. As I say, it does provide wrong information. As I say, either correctly pulls it or just makes it up. And it does look like they have solved the issue with character counting. So you saw the screen grab earlier, and that was just blasé with how many characters it used. But then I did it a couple of other times, and it actually did give me back the headlines, and it also actually in brackets said 27 with spaces included. So it did then give me back and actually character count it correctly. So it does seem that they've improved it, but it can be a little bit hit and miss sometimes. So there might be a bit of legacy problems in there. So it's always just to double check that what you are asking it in terms of like characters, etc., is actually providing you with that. So that was meant to be a screen grab there, but it's not provided it. And this is, I just wanted to include in here a link plugin. So this is us using the link plugin, and you can see in this example, we asked ChatGPT to write some titles and descriptions for Google responsive search ads about garden furniture, which was on the Charles Bentley site. And then we also said to please supply some alternative ideas with the correct character count as well. So we just put it in there just to make sure. And this screen grab here was meant to show you the results, in which it would have stuff like the bracketed to tell you actually how many characters were in it, etc. But yeah, the link plugin is good. Again, this is, as I say, the data is sort of not that fresh, but if you wanted to, rather than writing out a massive prompt with, 5 USPs of Charles Bentley, 5 furnitures or whatever, it's far easier just to provide them with a link and say, go onto this website. This is where you can find all your information, and then come back and we want you to do X, Y, Z. So yeah, link plugin, which you sort of have access to when you subscribe to ChatGPT Plus, is a good development. Sorry, it's now here. So this is the response it provided back. So you can see it's counting the characters for you, and they all look pretty usable. So what you'd do here, and I say it's still very much it's all to do with brand guidelines and stuff like this. So for example, award-winning garden decor. You need to sort of double check stuff like that, because it might be that it wasn't the garden stuff that was award winning. It might have been the home section which was award winning, or whatever it may be. So you just need to check that it is actually providing this stuff, and that because again it might say, oh, award winning, it tends to be pretty good. We tend to get a pretty good response when we provide headlines that says that. So when someone asks for headlines, we'll just chuck award winning in there. So you just need to double check stuff like that. And I say it's more like making sure it's humanized. So some of these descriptions, headlines can sound quite robotic, and then again just making sure with this as well. There's what I'd say with my experience of it, it still requires a lot of technical knowledge to make sure you are using it correctly. It's not a case of just lob it in and it's all good to go. So things like reading the headlines and descriptions and saying, okay, is there actually any substance in what they're saying? What is my objective of this, ad copy? Is it to get them to visit the site? Is it to get them to make a purchase, wherever it may be? And you can see in these, for example, there's no form of call to action. Now, you could obviously do extra steps to ask ChatGPT to do that, but obviously without even that knowledge of when you're writing ad copy, you need call to actions, etc. This is where to some degree your own knowledge can limit what ChatGPT also provides back. So you just need to be taking into account them elements as well, of just making sure that it's all well and good being fluffy and looking nice, but is it actually doing what you're wanting to do? Is it actually delivering the message you want to deliver? You might have certain brand guidelines that you speak about a product in a certain way. Now, you might go back to them and say, look, ChatGPT is now saying these ways. Are they acceptable? They might say yes. But at the end of the day, if the line is we speak about this product in a certain way, you can't then just get ChatGPT to just start going off with all these more like blasé type ad copy. So yeah, to wrap it up, just to recap slightly. So I think, to be honest, ChatGPT has made great strides. When I first used the ChatGPT 3, it was pretty awful. I just wasted loads of time and got nowhere. I had asked for ad copy and I'd get like 50 character headlines back, and it was all just very wishy-washy. And part of that also might have been my knowledge of it. So over time I also learned stuff like how to prompt engineer it to get the better responses. But yeah, it will. I think it will start to help me more and more day to day. But there is still quite a lot of time invested in actually just getting it to generate that information. If you're writing one ad or one social post, probably not worth your time. If you're writing 200 social posts or whatever it may be, it might be worth your time going through that process of engineering the responses out, quality checking them, etc. So there's a bit of a balancing act there as well in terms of time. Would you is it quicker, more efficient, and better to use ChatGPT, or to just do it yourself? So yeah, it's not as simple as just asking a vague question and just getting a perfect answer back. It's not a 2-minute job. It does take, back and forth dialogue with the platform. I'm in the current opinion that it can help some elements of my role as paid media. As I said, there's quite a lot of quality assurance and humanization at the moment, and in just some cases, it's just so wrong. It's somewhat dangerous. If you're going to ask it certain questions and it'll provide information back, the one thing I would, one example I'd say is, for example, anyone who's ever done like a Google Ads certification, you will know that them certifications tend to be more about, encouraging to do broad match and spend money. It's basically Google's way of saying, like, confirming that you're going to go on their platform now and spend loads of money. And so I'd be cautious of stuff like that, where ChatGPT starts to bring in answers where it just says, oh, just use broad match or just use this. And people who don't have the technical knowledge to say, that sounds reasonable, I'll test that, or that's completely out of the realms of, or that's just completely wrong. I'd be a bit cautious with them, people who don't have that knowledge, because again, you'll just assume that it's correct, and it might not be. So it can be quite, I'd say caution, and that's even from me. If I do stuff to do with Google Ads or Facebook, I pretty much know if stuff is wrong and right or wrong. Sorry, but if I ever go out of my area, I step with a bit more caution and quality check stuff a lot more. So yeah, it's just without that foundational knowledge, you can't really QC that information coming back and forth as well. And that's all. Yeah, my general summary, I guess.
Brilliant. That was really good. It's great to hear your perspective as well. I just wondered if people would like to see Richard's question about the monasteries, what the paid version actually gave us. I think that might be quite worth sharing if you don't mind me sharing for a section. Now, the only thing is I need to check is there any questions in the chat? I think James has been answering most of them, hasn't he?
Yeah, he knows a lot about ChatGPT as well, another AI. He's the boff, isn't he, really, at Annika?
I'm having trouble working out how to share my screen because I've come in a different mode from normal. So I might not be able to do it today. That's really annoying. You know how you said earlier on about the screen being a different layout from normal. Okay, so a few months ago you were pretty skeptical, weren't you, Jordan, about the use of it? So have you changed your opinion quite a lot now?
No, I'm still skeptical, to be honest. Yeah, but I think some of that might be also educate myself even further with stuff like, I do know some plugins, but there might be a lot more out there that can help. It's like most things, until you're told about it, you don't know that you can do X, Y, Z. So if you did an Excel sheet and you're like, I'm having to manually do this, and someone said, well, you can do this formula and it makes it do it instantly. I think it's the same sort of thing with ChatGPT. It's still pretty new, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
So yeah, there might be a part of that, but there's also that skeptical side of.
Well, the other thing is that marketeers have just got one step ahead. We did a training course with some of the guys at Eon, and they were in the marketing department of Eon, and some of them hadn't even heard of it, and that was about a month and a half ago. So we have got a bit of a sort of a head start on everybody. But for Richard's benefit, this is ChatGPT 4, and I said, please could list all the monasteries in the UK and where they're located, putting the results in a table. So sorry, can't do that. I cannot generate or display information in a table form. However, I can provide you with a textual lists. So this is ChatGPT 4, and you can see it's got St Augustine's, but it says it's Canterbury, Kent. But you'll notice it's sort of, they're quite generic where the locations are. And so what I then did is I then went into ChatGPT again. This is the paid version, but this time what I did was I chose the version. If I go and do a new chat, when I go here, I can add the plugins. So this time I did it with the plugins, and you can see that first of all it went and looked for these websites. So it went to a lot of places, and it then gave me an inner table this time, and you've got a lot more, and you've got it monastery location. You've got a lot more there, and it then went and did them for Scotland and Wales. So you've got a much more extensive list this time. It's even saying it's still not extensive, and that's just because it's got access to new information. So having the plugins, I think, is going to be a major advantage. And now if you did the same thing in Bing, for example, it wouldn't be as good, because Bing, the new Bing, you can, if you go and load the new Bing, that's got a lot of AI in it, including image generators. And that does use ChatGPT 4, and you can get it for free, but you don't get quite as good answers. So I definitely think that it's worth paying the extra for the paid version. Cool. Well, let's just do, let me stop sharing. Let me just bring, I'd like to thank Jordan for all his hard work. And let me just bring up the reviews. So if you like what you've heard today, please give Jordan a review. So this is the Google reviews, first of all. So if you can do that one, that'd be amazing. You do have to log in with Google reviews. So if you prefer, we do also use reviews.io, which is great. And while I've got your attention, I just wanted to tell you that Leicester Digital Live, which many of you went to last year, it's our 8th conference. Tickets are now available. I think this is probably the first webinar that we've promoted them. So if any of you want to come to our annual conference, we've already got HubSpot, SEMrush. We're just waiting for Microsoft and hopefully TikTok, but we've got to go through their PR team before that can be signed off. And then altogether, there's 10 amazing speakers. The themes, automation and integration. Early bird tickets are only £50, and that includes your lunch. And all the profits go to Leicester Hospital charity. The tickets will go up to £75. That's a little way away. If you are based in Leicester and you want to come and see us in person, myself and Darren and some of the team will be at the Leicester Depot next week. So please go and get a free ticket to come and join us. It's 3 o'clock to 5:30. There'll be drinks and nibbles, and I'm going to be doing my stuff on Integrate, and Darren's doing stuff on planning and setting up and writing an integrated strategy. So lots of things there for you. That takes us nicely to 10 o'clock. So unless there's any more questions, I suggest that you all go and have a nice cup of tea and have a great weekend, and we'll send the video around in a couple of hours. And just to warn you, next week's on SEO. I know that's really popular, so I think it's going to be Brad doing a talk on SEO next week. So thanks very much, everybody, for coming, and thank you, Jordan, for doing this great presentation on ChatGPT and generative AI. So thanks, everybody. See you next week.
Cheers.
Bye.